This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Whether you're packing for a vacation or dressing for a wedding, Nordstrom has head-to-toe looks for wherever summer takes you. From swimwear and bold color to romantic florals and dresses that make an entrance, find the right style for every unforgettable moment. Shop new arrivals from brands you love like Farm Rio, Free People, Vince, Wait, and Stod. Plus free shipping and returns and styling help whenever you need it make it all so easy. Shop now in stores at Nordstrom.com or download the Nordstrom app.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
This video might completely shake everything you ever thought you believed in. If you've had your edible tonight or you've been smoking a little bit to get ready for bed, please don't watch this video. It's going to mess your mind up, okay? This is going to be the conspiracy of Tartaria. This is one of the deepest rabbit holes we've ever done. This video is going to be pretty long. Buckle in and get ready for it. So the belief of Tartaria, if y'all don't know what I'm talking about, is essentially the belief that our civilization is much older than what we would think of. But what we are living in now is a reset of a once great civilization. So Tartaria was believed to have been wiped out by what's called the Great Mud Flood. And we believe that our history has been lost completely, or they have altered it on purpose so we don't make the same mistakes we did in the past. Now, I'm going to get more into that in a minute. This specific aspect I want to talk about first is about the school system and the insane asylums that existed all across the country, okay, in the United States. If y'all did not know it, at one point in time in the 1800s, insane asylums were the biggest buildings in the world. And one of them was actually in the United States. In fact, it actually held the record for the biggest building in the United States for quite a while, and it was in Ohio. These insane asylums were huge, and they were completely full, okay? You're talking about we didn't have, like, dedicated school systems yet, but we had these dedicated insane asylums that... Preston!
Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
Girl, winter is so last season. And now spring's got you looking at pictures of tank tops with hungry eyes. Your algorithm is feeding you cutoffs. You're thirsty for the sun on your shoulders. That perfect hang on the patio sundress. Those sandals you can wear all day and all night. And you've had enough of shopping from your couch. Done hoping it looks anything like the picture when you tear open that envelope? It's time for a little in-person spring treat. It's time for a trip to Ross. Work your magic.
Sorry, I have a goat that is just causing absolute mayhem. And anyhow, these insane asylums were completely full. And we were just throwing people in them left and right. And a lot of people say, oh yeah, because we didn't have the medicine that we do today. We didn't have hospitals anywhere near the size of these insane asylums, okay? And the architecture on them, beautiful. I mean, like, even if they were like made today, you would be like, who made this beautiful building? And we think that the reason why the insane asylums were so big is those were the people that were left over from the age of Tartaria. And they did not want to conform with this whole altering of history or this void history error that we go into. I think they tell us a lot of truth in pop cultures. And if you're One Piece fans like me, boom, all right, spot the Luffy shirt, that a void century is a very real thing. And I think that we have had a void century very recently, okay? Because... let's look at the school system and how they do this to us, okay? If there was something like Tartaria and they had advanced technology and they had advanced buildings and civilization and they didn't want us to make the same mistakes or they wanted to alter what happened so people in power could be in power again, you know, because maybe they do want to be rich and powerful, you know, be damned the consequences. They don't want us to know that if they do these things, it will eventually end badly. It just won't end badly for them because they'll be dead and gone by the time the consequences come around. Think about the school system, guys. I was shocked to realize, I didn't know this, okay? We didn't have the full K through 12 like we do today until post-World War II, okay? We didn't have like basic schooling in America until like the turn of the 19th century, like the 1900s, okay? Before that, before like 1910, it was pretty common for a kid to only go to school for about 12 to 15 weeks in their entire life, 12 to 15 weeks. They would go just enough to learn to read and write, and that was it. And that was if you were lucky. Most kids didn't go to school, period, at all. So think about the school system now. Does it prepare you for the world? No, it doesn't. The school system teaches you how to listen and how to obey orders and sit there. Like, I don't care what you want to believe in. The school system is a brainwashing system. That's all it is. That's what it exists for. Think about when you turned 18, did you know how to do your taxes? Did you know how to prepare yourself in the real world? Did you know how a workplace worked? No, you didn't. You were a freaking moron compared to the real world, right? Because all they taught you about is history, science, math, and let's be honest, they could write anything in those history books and we would have to take it at face value. And you hear that same history from the time you're 5 years old until you're 18 years old. And there was a famous quote, back a long time ago, there's a famous quote, the winners write the history books. They can write anything we want to in there. You can write anything at all. We know history gets altered so many times. Think about since we were kids versus now, that history books are literally different. Science books are literally different, okay? Who was making those history books and those science books? We have to take anything they teach us at face value. And the people who did not want to go along with the school system, I believe, were put in these giant insane asylums. These giant, and deemed crazy. They were deemed insane. We're finding out now that every conspiracy theorist out there, we're turning out to be right, like every time. They talked about Jeffrey Epstein 10 years before he was caught. I can't remember that one guy named Alex something. Everybody thinks he's completely insane, and he does come off as bonkers, but he talked about Bohemian Grove years before Bohemian Grove was discovered to be a real thing. And now Bohemian Grove is not even a myth or a conspiracy. It's just like a thing we know about. And he talked about that a decade before, and everybody called him insane. Okay. I talked about the NASA scientists going missing weeks before anybody else was. And then all of a sudden, and people were calling me insane. And then all of a sudden it's on the news. Okay. And people were like, oh, I knew it the whole time. I'm like, where were you last week? When you were calling me crazy. We see this kind of stuff over and over and over again. But the next part I want to get into is what's called the Great Mud Flood. We talked about it a minute ago of what might have caused this, okay? Now, if you're a really religious person, and you believe in the Bible, you know where I'm going to this. And it's the Great Flood. We talked about Noah's Ark and all that stuff. I don't know if y'all know this or not, but because they don't like to talk about it in schools ever. The Great Flood is not a religious myth or a legend or whatever. Like, science can tell that it happened. Like, that's not up for debate. We can see that a Great Flood completely covered pretty much everything in Africa and the Middle East and parts of Europe around that time that the Bible talks about. Like, we know that happened. It's not a myth, okay? Now, did Noah really build the ark and have all the animals? I personally don't think so. So, but anyhow, let's go. How does this tie back into Tartaria? When that great mud flood would have happened, it would have added so much sediment to everything around. Like, the mud would have just settled. Everything would have gotten buried. Why do we have to dig up our past? Why do we have to dig up the pyramids? People go all the time, 10,000 years have passed and the pyramids got buried. Why? There's never not been Egyptians. They were always there. So unless it just got buried suddenly and rapidly, why did they let it happen? That's the only explanation, is that it got buried suddenly and rapidly. You guys always see the pyramids and you think about the pyramids being out in the middle of the desert. They're not. They're right next to the city. And that city has been there for thousands of years. Like, people have always been living there. So why did the pyramids get buried? Well, we can even go over to the United States and we have to unbury things that were made like in the 1700s. Why? Why did those things get buried? Look at these things in Europe where the excavators are like, oh yeah, they built these underground tunnels and stuff. Why did they put windows on them? Here's a building right here that looks like a tower, and you can tell 5 stories of it are underground, yet there's windows on the tower. I don't think they built that underground. I think at one point that was above ground, and that building can't be more than 1,000 years old. There's no scientifically possible way that building would have been buried unless it was a sudden, rapid event. It wouldn't have just sank over time. That's not how the world works, okay? It would have gotten buried immediately. So this goes back to what I was saying a minute ago about how we might have been way more advanced than what we were now. And then this great mud flood wiped out everybody. And they even talk about if there was, like they say hypothetically, if there was a great mud flood, it would have killed like 85% of the world's population. Like, it would have been a cataclysmic event. So there wouldn't have been a ton of people left over anyhow that would have even known about it, okay? That would have even been able to tell the stories. And then a few generations later, that would have just been old wives' tales from, great-grandpas and great-grandpas. And the new generation might not have even known about it. So our current history might have just been a bunch of story tales that we made up and put in a book because we were just telling each other stories around the campfire, or they were tales that were passed down. And you hear about Alexander the Great. It wasn't 1,000 years ago that happened. That might have been 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago. And those were stories left over from before the Great Mud Flood. This hole, guys, this rabbit hole you can go down is insane. It is wild. But the school system thing to me is the biggest kicker. It's almost like the school system just exists just to make us believe this certain way and to sell us this lie and for us to get pitched this ball and for us to just catch it and take it and walk away. Because when you think about school, it doesn't teach you any. I literally feel like school is such a waste. Nothing I do in my professional life uses any of my schooling whatsoever. It uses some of my college, but kindergarten through the time I was 18, basic math and stuff, I mean, that's all you need. And no one has ever asked me what the cosine of X was to figure out you know what I'm saying? Like, if everybody was going to be engineers, I get it. We're not. Teach that stuff in college. If everybody was going to be mathematicians, I get it. But we're not. 99% of people will not use 99% of what they learn in a K through 12 elementary school, school system. They're not going to do it. The only thing I can think of is for that common knowledge of like us all have the same basis or the same story. So it gets us all universally on the same page. I know I sound crazy talking about this, but it's one of those things when you deep dive into it, nothing else makes sense. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all on why this stuff would be buried. Okay. These pictures are from like the Chicago World's Fair. The Chicago World's Fair was supposedly, it was a little over 100 years ago. And nothing in Chicago looks as pretty as these pictures that I'm showing y'all. These World's Fair photos seem to show a futuristic world that we had and futuristic buildings and this beautiful architecture. And you know what their legitimate, I'm not shitting you, what the legitimate response is from officials on why they say all these buildings no longer exist? Because if these buildings just built 100 years ago, they'd still be around today, right? But they don't, they're not there. And the official response is that those were paper mache, essentially like Hollywood props. Like that was just a fake scene they made for the World's Fair. No. Look at those are not paper mache. They're not. Okay. They were saying that they paper mache this whole area, like this whole city block. And that's why you see all these photos. And that the next time it rained, it started getting crumbly. And then they just tore it down and stuff. It wasn't sustainable, obviously. And that's why I think, like, if you look at our civilization right now, if you look at right now today, 2026, why almost every technological advancement we've ever had in the whole history of humankind, we're telling ourselves that it happened in the last 100 to 150 years. Because if you go back to 300 years ago, or go back to 30,000 years ago, all those people during that 30,000 years were essentially living the same. They had almost no technological advancements whatsoever. Like one dude made fire, one dude made the wheel, and that's it. And then all of a sudden, in the last 100 years, we've got cell phones and cars and airplanes and, the internet, all this crazy stuff. I'm not buying that. I think that we did have that just a few hundred years ago in this void century, and we're just now learning to reharness it, okay? I think we're just now regathering it. And that would make sense on why Nikola Tesla talked about having these pyramid free energy emitting structures. What if that's what the pyramids were? If you look at Nikola Tesla's design of free energy, it's just a pyramid. Like, it's a great pyramid. And he talks about how it would, use the Earth's frequencies and the electromagnetic waves of the Earth and just amplify them. Okay. Sorry, man, I'm getting wild. I'm spitting on myself here. So these electronic waves would give us all free energy. And maybe that's what the pyramids are doing. Maybe that's why we can't understand some of these hieroglyphics, is because we're not thinking they had power and electricity, because we don't see power poles everywhere. But what if they just had it and we just didn't understand it, and we're just still relearning how to use that technology that they already had a long time ago? Guys, I got to cut it off here because this is where Facebook is going to stop me and TikTok's going to stop me. So go to our podcast. It's called Matt from Nomads. I'm going to do a bigger deep dive on this here in the next few days. Hope y'all enjoyed this. The podcast link is in the comments. Really hope to see you guys around.